Perhaps you don't need to be a scientist to understand science. Welcome to Cranium VS Skull. Welcome to the future. It's broken. Facial recognition, automated music composition, and sailing holidays with the inventor of 3D printers.
You work in computer science?
Yes, that's right. I'm a software engineer.
They let you out.
You can't move without coming across a software engineer.
Emerging, deep within the depths of Cranium, Robert Pickering.
And in the Skull Corner, Meagan Lopez, digital advertiser.
So I would say as an engineer, I more take existing knowledge and apply it to specific problems, but it requires me to have a good understanding of computer science. One of the first big uses of networks was email. So people realised that the distributions of memos was quite time-consuming and expensive.
Because they used to use fax machines and or pigeons.
Pigeons, but also just there would be an office worker whose job was to take the memos from one place to another.
So then how would a software engineer come in?
So a software engineer would be the one that created the email.
Ooh, Cranium.
What's your favorite thing about being a software engineer?
I do find it is creative, and it's quite satisfying to see customers using your software and being pleased with it, making their lives better.
That's very altruistic. What's like your favorite thing that you've developed?
I developed a little software package to be able to write music from computer code. So that was quite good fun.
Have you had any hit records off of that?
I haven't, but there is kind of a community that's evolved around that. There are people that give live coding concerts, so they will, like a DJ, they will turn up.
Coding concerts?
They will turn up with a laptop and some predefined software, but then as the night goes on, they'll change the tunes by editing the programming language, and depending on the mood, they will get people dancing or not.
Wow, so people like show up to these concerts to hear.
They do, yeah.
And like
a lot of them might be also software engineers.
And are they dancing, or are they typically like sitting there like listening to the code?
Yeah, people do dance. And they quite often have.
Do they get drunk and like crazy?
Computer scientists tend to be quite restrained.
Damn it! I thought you were going to tell me like there's some big orgies. Lots of drugs.
That is some of the most vicious, violent, voluptuous cranium action I have ever seen in my life. I cannot believe what I'm witnessing here.
Voluptuous indeed, voluptuous indeed. The words of a voluptuous vicissitude vividly veered into this conversation and viciously, violently venerated itself into the mind of these dead words.
Is code also what creates like robot speaking? Like
yeah, I mean everything comes down to some kind of programming language.
And zeros.
Yeah, because ones and zeros are too difficult for a human to understand. You have programs which are essentially text, and the text is translated to the ones and zeros. But the idea is you try to build up layers of abstraction. At its core, the computer is just essentially adding numbers. So a lot of the progression of computer science has been finding ways to package that into things that are more understandable. So an image is just ones and zeros that represent red, green, blue values.
Wait, say that again?
So an image
Yeah.
would just be a list of different numbers, and each of those numbers would represent how red or blue or green a pixel should be.
Oh, right, okay. Because then if you merge those, then you can create like purple and orange and things like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
I was reading a book about printing, and they explained how that the colours of the light spectrum are continuous, but the sensors in your eyes essentially pick up the red, green and blue light.
Are you listening to what he's saying?
I was trying to listen, but my ears fell asleep.
I was just on a boat with the guy who invented 3D printing.
Right.
Would that be a computer scientist or a software engineer?
Yeah, well, you need a team of both, and hardware specialists. So a 3D printer is a machine that can lay down individual, very small bubbles or very small drops of a substance to build up an object.
Thank you for just saying that, because like in my mind the whole time, I mean, I talked to him a lot, but not about 3D printing.
Look at her, tear him iambic pentameter from iambic pentameter.
I was like, how can you make guns from that? Like, I always pictured it as just like styrofoam. So, but what you just said makes a lot more sense if it's different substances, right? So that's how.
I mean, a lot depends on the printers. Some of them, it just is plastic, but there's quite a range of different 3D printers now.
Gotcha.
That's not an answer.
What do you think is like the most dangerous, like potential dangerous thing coming up?
Yeah, so I think there's quite a big ethical debate to come about the role of artificial intelligence. I mean, progressively we've seen technology has helped a person do more work. I mean, it all started with farming. The technology came into farming. All of a sudden, one person was able to produce more food than they needed, so that not everybody then needed to work the land. So we've seen this progression through history where somebody will create technology, it will allow people to do more work more easily, and that will make people's jobs redundant. Like going back to the email example, email has meant that there's no more
Pigeons.
And historically speaking, generally we've seen that enough new jobs are created to still have a relatively high level of employment. I think now with artificial intelligence, we're getting to a point where we might see that the new jobs aren't being created. So we could lead
Hence
to
the white male anger.
Yeah.
Adam was an all-you-can-eat buffet.
I mean, a big reason that they think that Trump was elected is because of all of the jobs that were being taken away. White males feel like, they're losing their place in society for a number of reasons. And then the blue-collar workers, because a lot of their jobs are being taken away from machines or robots and things like that.
There she goes, proving all men are stupid like all women have for all time. Hopefully he won't kill her for it like all men do for all time.
With the artificial intelligence progressing more and more, we're probably going to see that cutting into more and more middle-class jobs, so more and more managerial roles being replaced by artificial intelligence.
Can you give me an example?
I was talking to the boss of my company the other day, and he was saying that he was organising a meeting with the boss of another company and talking to her secretary. And he said when he met the guy, your secretary can be a bit cold sometimes. But it turned out that he was dealing with an AI.
Oh my God.
So the AI was able to understand his emails and then look for spaces in the other guy's calendar and accept a meeting invitation.
Well, in the newsroom as well, they are starting to use artificial intelligence to write articles.
Email is an interesting one. That it was an open standard, so that you could have an email client running on one computer that was not necessarily the same as an email client running on another computer. So it could be written by two different companies, two different teams of software engineers, yet they could communicate with each other because the engineers took the time to agree a standard.
Okay.
And so
like a standard language?
In computing, there needs to be a very fixed standard that certain values come in a certain order for the computer to be able to deal with them.
And certain values being?
Well, a lot of it comes down to text. And computers can only store numbers, essentially.
Still to this day?
Yeah, so the way computers work is everything is a number. Everything is encoded in binary, which is a string of ones and zeros.
Yeah.
But obviously you need to be able to manipulate other kinds of data. So what they do is encode that data to a number.
What about emojis?
So yeah, emojis are stored the same way. It's quite interesting to see the progression. Like in the early days of computing, there was just these 250 characters that were defined, but as time went by, they found that was not enough because there's obviously a lot of other kinds of alphabets. So they started to generate standards for the other alphabets, and then they created this all-encompassing standard called Unicode, with the aim of being able to encode any character, including the thousands and thousands of characters in Chinese and Japanese. And they found that they had enough numbers left over that they could also encode emojis that way.
Do you ever, as a software engineer, get jealous of the computer scientists because you wish that you could like come up with the ideas?
So, as an engineer working in industry, it's true that I am more taking the output of what people have developed and then reusing it.
But is there ever an opportunity where the software engineers actually like become the computer scientists, or vice versa?
Yeah, so there is some exchange between them. Computer scientists tend to work in academia, but they do study the best practices in the industry. And there are companies like Microsoft who run Microsoft Research, which essentially employs academics but within an industry. For example, for facial recognition, I couldn't develop my own facial recognition software, but what I could do is look on the internet for a library that implements facial recognition and then write some software. So what is it that you do, Megan?
Thank you for asking. I've been working in digital advertising for 10 years. So I started, I had my own company first, which was social media marketing. And we basically were community managers for brands. So we became like the voices of brands online. We had a team of what we called assassins who would come up with ideas. I mean, speaking of bots, actually, we created a bot to monitor like the chatter on social media for different topics, and that would help inform us of what we were going to be talking about, or what was peaking in virality, or what was interesting to the general public.
Okay. So how did you create that bot then?
I mean, I didn't. It was one of our co-founders. He was a developer, so okay. I have no idea.
I closed my eyes only because I needed to see what I wasn't saying. Discover it, grab hold to it, bring it back to you, and see if you could do anything with it.
And so we actually helped Facebook build their business manager. So yeah, I have worked with, I guess, would those be considered software engineers?
Yes,
okay.
Sure. They probably do a job that's quite similar to mine. And how did you find that experience of working with them? Because they have a reputation of being quite difficult people in general.
You're not doing that.
Hey, you're not in therapy. You don't have to be good for anybody.
No, I think you have good examples, simple for the layman like me.
Yep. Well,
Cranium.
Yeah.
No, I'm the skull. No, you're the cranium.
Where do you think he got his shirt from?
What do I think he got it from?
Yeah. You think it was a store, or was it some intergalactic mind beam that exploded through his cranium to destroy all skulls?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, it was from one of those t-shirt cannons at Notting Hill Carnival.
So you talked about facial recognition, and how is that being used currently? Like,
facial recognition is definitely one of the more scary technologies in that, I mean, the classic example is in China. It's a large part of the population have their face on record. So in some cities, they have cameras surveying pedestrian crossings, and if you cross the roads on a red man, the government will recognise your face and send you a text message to say that you've been fined.
Oh my God.
But
that's the ultimate police state, isn't it?
It is bad, and there also has been incidents of it being used to track dissidents. The government considered dissidents, who are quite often human rights activists. So,
and then finding them, tracking them down,
Yep.
and locking them up.
So the example of crossing the road sounds fairly benign, but it has more scary implications. Although we shouldn't think that just because we're in a Western democracy that we're free from this. One of the scarier applications for me is the rise of video screen advertising. So
Video screen advertising?
So you see in stations, they play videos to passers-by on video screens, and not all of them, but it has been observed that some of them have cameras with facial recognition software that are tracking how people are interacting with their adverts.
We actually had a company come in to present to us, and that's they actually do that on your computer. So they ask for permission on your laptop, and so then they can sense your emotions as you're looking at certain ads. So then you can, the idea is then to be able to target people based off of your facial expressions and how you're feeling when you see an ad, or when you're reading, or if you're reading an article that makes you sad, then maybe some people will want to target you with antidepressants.
And beyond your emotions, they also can very easily profile your race, so they could tell if you're African or Asian or European, which has pretty scary implications.
I used to always get these engagement ring advertisements because they could see that I had been in a relationship for like 2 or 3 years. So you can target based off of like how long you're in a relationship. And yeah, scary shit, man.
Va va voom, look at them go.
Crash! She's completely crashed his cranium into the screen of a non-existence.
In America, they're basically just giving away their rights. Like, they don't give a shit about, and people don't tend to understand or care about their data.
Yeah, I think there is a big problem that people think that the services provided by Google and Facebook are all free, which, they are to the end user, but you sort of end up paying by giving away all your data, and that has been very profitable for them.
What did you think about the Cambridge Analytica? Like, did you watch any of those interviews by the British Parliament? And he was a software engineer, right?
Yeah, he was a software engineer, and it's exactly the sort of ethical debate we need to have more of in software engineering. I think the thing that is particularly worrying about the Cambridge Analytica case was the data was taken illegally without the user's consent. But
just to go back a few steps, Cambridge Analytica was a company who was responsible for profiling the millions of people on Facebook, and then which basically led to Russia being able to target those users with false information, and which then led to some say Trump being elected. But
yeah, potentially. We it's difficult to be certain about how much influence they had, but potentially.
Yeah. Oh, and then also they say led to potentially influencing Brexit.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is why the British Parliament was interviewing Cambridge Analytica, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
Right.
I think that's why we have to think very carefully about these questions. That if you have the money and the resources, it's now possible to create very targeted adverts that are going to influence elections.
Cranium Skull.
That was fun.
How many software engineers does it take to change a light bulb?
How many?
None, it's a hardware problem.
Join us next time
Join us next time
for another episode
for another episode
of
of